sort of keep zooming out and show you the impact of a weekend. It's a very, very important question. Okay, there we see a weekend happening. Okay, just bear with me while I zoom all the way out. There's actually a much better way of doing this, which is like that. Okay, so I did this sort of briefly last week, but it's useful to remind ourselves of the issues of trading intraday. I'd just like to remind you, we're trading a 1 hour cycle, and we're using the Sentient trading methodology, so we are taking on average 4 trades per hour. That's one on average every 15 minutes. Okay, and I can show you in a how much how long those trades are and so on. Okay, so I've zoomed out to show you the most recent weekend. Okay, at the far left of my screen, there's a little bit of data. I think you can see it. Let me turn on the whiteboard. At the far left of the screen, I need to turn on a pen as well, is data. So this point here, where I've drawn that arrow, that was 11 p.m. last Friday night. Okay, this is the weekend. Okay, this is midnight, Monday morning or Sunday night over here. Okay, so what happened in between, and why has Sentient Trader drawn a big gap? Because Hurst cyclic theory, one of the really important fundamental concepts of Hurst cyclic theory, is that the cycles keep happening over the weekend, right? Cycles keep moving. Now we're trading the 1 hour cycle, which let me try and draw the 1 hour cycle. That's the 1 hour cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so in fact there would have been 48 1 hour cycles that we missed over the weekend. So when you turn Sentient Trader on the first thing on Monday morning, it has got to bridge a gap in terms of its analysis. It's got to bridge a gap of 48 hours. Okay, it's got to bridge that gap. How does it do it? How does it know what's happening? Well, it uses a fairly interesting process to generate dummy data, because it just does not have real data. So as new data comes in, it looks at the new data coming in, it looks at the previous data that happened, and it uses a really interesting process, which I don't have time to talk much about now. But it uses a process to generate what I call dummy data. And it tries to work out what's been happening in the market. But of course, half an hour into receiving new data on Monday, you cannot start trading the 1 hour cycle, because there simply is not enough data, because Sentient Trader cannot position those longer cycles. Remember, when you're trading the 1 hour cycle, Sentient Trader needs to know where at least the 2 longer cycles are. Okay, so what are the 2 longer cycles than the 1 hour cycle? They are, of course, the 160-minute cycle and then the 5 hour cycle. So Sentient Trader must know where the 5 hour cycle is in its journey through life. It needs to know, in other words, where a 5 hour trough is. So you cannot start trading the 1 hour cycle until Sentient Trader has found a trough of the 5 hour cycle. Okay, how long will it take Sentient Trader to find a trough of the 5 hour cycle? Well, it must find a trough of the 5 hour cycle in 1.5 times the wavelength of that cycle. In other words, 7.5 hours. Okay, that is why the live analysis system only starts trading at 9 a.m. on Monday. Okay, well, I've said it needs 7.5 hours. Okay, so you should not make trading decisions on the 1 hour cycle until you have 7.5 hours of data to position the 5 hour cycle. So that makes it 7:30 in the morning. All right. Now, why do we make it 9 o'clock? Well, our offices are based in Italy. And it's a requirement when you live in Italy that on your way into work, you have to stop off and have a coffee at the bar. You have to chat to people and so on, and that can take a good hour and a half. So we only get into our offices 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, which is why Sentient Trader starts trading then. That's actually just a joke. Sentient Trader starts at 9 a.m. because we give it a bit of leeway. Sure, within 7.5 hours we should have found a trough of the 5.5 hours of the 5-hour cycle, but I find it better to make it 9 hours. Okay, so I hope this is answering Andy's question. How do you deal with the big gaps that happen over the weekend? So again, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that trading using Hurst cyclic principles is very powerful and it really works, and you can do it intraday. The bad news is that because us lazy human beings don't trade through the weekends, we don't have any record of where the prices have gone over the weekend. So it's not possible after a long break to start trading something like the 1-hour cycle until we have positioned a trough of at least the 5-hour cycle. Okay, and I see Andy is doing some maths, and that's just what I'm about to come to. The 5-hour cycle would need 2 days by 1.5 equals 3 days. No, fortunately, there's a bit of an escape clause there. And the reason for that is that when you start looking at the longer cycles, like the 5-hour cycle, and let me just clear this board and put it on again. Looking at the 5-hour cycle, decisions using the 5-hour cycle, you need to accurately position the cycle 2 degrees longer than the 5-hour cycle. Now, it depends what nominal model you work with. Let me just look at another computer where we're looking at the 5-hour cycle. The cycle 2 degrees longer than the 5-hour cycle is the 2-day cycle. Okay, so the reasoning is that you must have identified the most recent positioning of a 2-day cycle trough. Okay, so what that means is that if you suspect that the 2-day cycle trough has not been correctly positioned yet, in other words, it hasn't been found on Friday, then you need to be cautious trading on Monday morning. If, however, the 2-day cycle has been found on a Friday, then and you're fairly convinced about it, then you can start trading after, in fact, only the first 5-hour cycle has been found. So, as a general rule of thumb, I use the same 7.5 to 9 hour rule for all intraday cycles. Okay, it is possible. There are some occasions where you need to be cautious, and those are occasions where you're looking for the 2-day cycle trough or the 5-day cycle trough to occur really soon on Monday morning, in which case you need to avoid trading. So the only thing is you can't just automatically entirely just trade these cycles, although we do, particularly on a hypothetical basis. And in fact, the rule seems to hold true that the longer cycles trade quite well. We don't often get really bad sort of Monday mornings. Okay. So I hope that answers that question. And gosh, there are lots of questions. Can you please tell me how to use cycles for hourly trading? Okay, Anirudh, I hope I pronounced that correctly. How to use cycles for hourly trading? Gosh, that I don't know if you've got several months. I can explain to you how to do it. The best thing I suggest is to come to a workshop, of course, because the workshops explain everything about it. How to use cycles for hourly trading? I'm tempted to say the easiest way of doing it is to use Sentient Trader to do it, but that's just being flippant. Yeah, keep coming to Trader Chats. Sentient Trader uses obviously Hurst's cycle to analyze the market. It identifies the cycles. Hourly trading, I don't know if you mean trading the 1-hour cycle like the live analysis system does, or whether you mean using hourly bars. If you were using hourly bars, then you would be trading the 5-day cycle probably. But all I can recommend is you keep coming to Trader Chats, and look at coming to some workshops, getting involved in our community, because the process of using cycles is not to trade as is not, unfortunately, something I can explain in a few minutes. But you're on the right path, I hope, by coming to Trader Chat to getting started with that. Luca, for end-of-day analysis, are the smaller data necessary, the daily data, are intraday needed? No, Luca, not at all. For performing end-of-day analysis, you only need daily data, and that's, of course, where Sentient Trader started. That's where many users start with Sentient Trader. They start working with end-of-day data, and then get into working intraday. Things get really fast and exciting when you're working with intraday, but you don't need intraday data to perform end-of-day analysis. You should be aware that if you're performing end-of-day analysis, you cannot trade a cycle shorter than about the 20-day cycle. That's because you need information about shorter cycles in order to trade a particular cycle. So using Hurst's trading methodology, you can trade the 20-day cycle using end-of-day data, and using Sentient trading methodology, you shouldn't trade any cycle shorter than the 40-day cycle using end-of-day data. If you want to trade shorter cycles like the 2-day cycle or the 5-day cycle or the 5-hour cycle, then of course you must have intraday data. And I see there's some breaking news. The central bank is lowering the rate on swaps, so markets are surging worldwide, which brings me to an interesting point about the live analysis system. And that is that the live analysis system, we don't usually define what are called no trade zones. But if you're